confident. I guess we will find out right now what it's really going to be. We'll see how the series turns out as we start off in the bottom left side of the map with the blue Protoss player, GunGFuBanDa.
And at the top right as the red Zerg, we have SortOf. I think both teamless.
Who was GunGFuBanDa on with before? Were they not both on Cascade, maybe perhaps before?
So SortOf was on Archangel most recently.
Oh, yeah. Archangel disbanded, right? I know that.
Yeah, and then GunGfu was on Cascade up until August. So yeah, it's really surprising.
Yeah. Good. SortOf was on Cascade for a long time until that was the start of 2020. Wow, so that was actually quite a long time ago. Okay. I mean, I remembered well, just not the right sort of time frame. So I'll take it.
A little off.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't completely wrong though. I could have said worse things, I think.
You could have. What was he on back in like 2013? I just feel like I would have remembered that. Yeah.
Western Wolves? Cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. I was like, I remember the logo. I remember the team name. But these guys have
he was Western Wolves, then he joined Alliance, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I do remember that one. I mean, he's been on so many teams.
There was a Swedish team for a while, and he was definitely on Team Revolution.
So many.
He seems to be on a lot of teams, I think. Be like one of the, but like in a genuine way as well. He hasn't just like joined a team and then like swapped off. It feels like he joins a team and it's like this team no longer supports StarCraft. And he's like, oh, on to the next one. He's been unfortunate in that regard.
Very unfortunate. He is looking to just represent a team for as long as possible, and he does get some decent results. It's always been unfortunate. So I guess GunGfu in a similar boat. It's just surprising to see no teams next to them. You always expect the little logos to pop up. So I had to double check. These guys are staples of the European scene. While they're not guaranteed into the playoffs, they do get it. Every I want to say like half the time, and that's a pretty damn good standing. But the question kind of is who right here today will help secure their playoff run. This one again is a very important best of 3, and GunGfu is going to try and at least get himself a lead in the early to mid game. Twilight Council is coming down.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. We really don't see a lot of Twilight openers. But you know what it is? GunGfu to me doesn't strike me as much of like a Stargate guy either, right? Like I feel like if he plays Stargate, he plays like more double Oracle or triple Oracle into like a ground army. I don't feel like, I know he has played the Skytoss stuff as well, but he has been one of the more open Protosters to doing different things and to doing these Twilight Council builds still and all of this kind of stuff. So kind of excited to see how this Glaives works out for him. There's a few different variations of Glaives still nowadays where you can sometimes go into the Robo Bay afterwards, sometimes you don't, etc. So we'll see what exact direction this one will take us in the next few moments as we just get ourselves set up. We got our extra gates going. And a lot of this from SortOf is, of course, the scouting, making sure you kind of know that this is coming so you can be just well prepared on time.
I do kind of feel like there's been cases of SortOf not doing so hot against Adepts. So I can see that as being one reason that GunGfu's doing this. The other reason is that I do also think of SortOf as he's a Queen Walk guy, and we're on Jagannatha, and he took the forward third base. And if there's a decent way to handle Queens, I mean, you could go for some of the 2-base air, but you can just hit it before it's ready. So Resident Glaives might just take that out of the pocket of the Zerg just by winning straight up. But that's not usually what we would expect. SortOf should have picked up on enough signals to know, of course, A, it's not a Stargate. No Oracle's been flying by. And that, if it's not a Stargate, then it is most likely going to be Resident Glaives. Dark Shrine and Archon drops have not been a thing so much lately. So we do have the Roachworn on the way. Some Spore Crawlers are coming down for potential follow-up Dark Shrine that can occur. But SortOf needs to get some units out right here, right now.
Yeah, it's still nice for GunGfu that SortOf is building those couple of spores already, and it is a Robo Bay behind this, so that should be some fun further down the line, as these Adepts are going to start shading forward, and they are going to get on top of this mineral line, just force these drones to run away, and they're actually going to shade on top of the drones, but that means these Adepts are abandoned. They're not really tucked into a corner, so full surface area available for these Lings for the most part. A few drones got caught up in it, but 4, 5, 6 workers, but all the Adepts going down. Not the best for GunGfu, but I mean, at least there is some amount of workers. The third base still not mining. So there's a couple things that are adding up here, I suppose, at the end of it all. I guess it was okay. And I mean, sort of going to take a little while to get back on board on the work account.
Yeah, I think I still like it overall for GunGFu. I mean, we'll
Yeah, I
see
think
actually
so.
as the follow-up comes in, right? But and the adepts potentially could get a lot more drones. It's just that I think that SortOf was hoping to really nip this in the bud. Like his lings were out on the map, probably looking for the warp prism and hoping to find the first warp in. They went to the left, the warp prism went to the right. So I feel like just off the bat, it wasn't that great for SortOf, and he managed to salvage it because GunGFu's shape may have been a little overeager, but it was a lot more awkward than I think SortOf was really hoping for.
Yeah, it would have been much smoother just obviously kind of, get rid of those adepts, keep a few extra drones alive. Because again, it's always that awkward position now where you've got to re-drone them a little bit, and then you're still trying to build units to make sure you don't fall apart to further waves of this as well. And we are on our way to those disruptors. Those are really going to be the main decider here, I feel like, right? So much of the time when you kind of have this adept opener, I feel like the disruptor follow-up is really the hit or miss moment, because now if the disruptors can do very well, okay, brilliant. You can actually really take the lead. If they don't do a lot, I feel like you can often find yourself in a lot of trouble very quickly because you've invested a lot into not then really dealing further damage. He's now going for a Colossus on the back of this 2 disruptor setup as well, so it's just going to be a bit of a wonky composition altogether. You don't very often see a Colossus in PvZ nowadays, and now we're just going to go straight into them after disruptors.
We had them for a moment, I want to say a year ago, because I very distinctly remember Parting doing great things with Colossus Blink. But yeah, then it kind of like tipped, it went back down, and that is a lot because of the popularity of truly mass Stargate builds, to be fair. But I'm glad to see almost like a return to the past a little bit. It's also going to be a build that really does apply a lot of harassment, and it can also track a big army that's coming across the map. So if SortOf was planning on doing a Roach Max attack or a Queen pull even after the damage was done, the disruptors could track it and hopefully either stall or get straight up kills, because those roaches would group up quite poorly. But it's not going to be that. SortOf is going to add on infestation pits. He's been droning, probably going to get a 4th base very soon, and GunGFu is not having to worry about being attacked. Now he can just focus on doing his own macro and maybe getting some drone kills.
Yeah, it's actually kind of neat, right? You're just very safe. You're kind of going to be in an all right position. He's, like you say, he didn't get much done right away. Only gets a couple drones here. He got one Ravager before as well, but it's nice. It keeps SortOf from coming across the map for sure. And it feels like SortOf has really been stalled out a bit, right? 4th hatch is only just coming through. He's on 64 drones, and it doesn't really make sense for him to go too many more. So he's just not really kind of exploding into that economy that a Zerg usually wants to be.
Definitely not exploding. I mean, he didn't get the economy set up first and foremost, 75 drones, 4 bases, and then made an army. It was a little bit more awkward, and it's now really awkward as he is a bit last second preparing a defense for what is, I don't think, a true engagement, but GunGFu is using maybe some mobility to try and pick off some things and use his range, perhaps of the Colossus and, to a degree, the disruptors, because you have to run away from the disruptor shots to control the midpoint of the map. If SortOf was prepared, if he had 180 supply, he potentially collapses in on this, and then GunGFu's in a decent bit of trouble and has to back away with force fields. But if SortOf's not totally prepared, then more power to the Protoss for doing exactly what GunGFu's doing.
Yeah, I love what GunGFu's getting up to here. It really feels like he's taking control of the middle of the map, and that's going a long way. There is a roach counterattack that he has to deal with as well, though, as he has taken some damage to that, not mining off this base at the moment, warping in a few stalkers to deal with it. Obviously, he is hunting for damage with these disruptors as he eats a bile or 2 as well. These disruptors are really going to be the make or break still in this fight. If they get one good connection, it could really kind of, persuade him to continue the fight and engage in. But you got to be really cautious of that, because if you don't find it and this army does get on top of you, it can still be scary. Maybe not quite enough Roach Ravager here yet, as those Roaches bottom side are finally dealt with. That's a ton of mining time that was lost here overall.
Mining time, for sure. But fortunately, the probe survives, so they go back to it. A 4th base is on the way as GunGFu realizes that he's maybe overstaying his welcome. You don't want to be feeling overconfident and then 30 Banelings, let's say, rolling from the left side. So does pull back, cleans everything up, gets back to a situation where you can focus entirely on the front lines and be ready to slap down force fields at the exact second they're needed. Well, speaking of some Banelings, they're just roly-polying into the 3rd base. GunGFu sees it.
Yeah, disruptor shots at the same time trying to line up, but oh no, the Banelings, they missed their better connections there. There was absolutely some better shots available, and Yeah, they kind of missed for sure. So a little bit of a miss. I mean, 8 probes is nice, but you just lost 4 drones as well. So GunGfu is like, okay, that's pretty minimal damage. I didn't lose anything killing your workers. You did. These lost fire on their own. So this is a bit of a bigger issue, but they're doing so much damage as they kite away. I mean, GunGfu's trying to salvage it. These units come around the left, and as they get to the left, the Colossi finally get to the right side. Oh, that was actually, I mean, should have been so much worse, it felt like, for GunGfu initially, as he will get a queen still harassing with these disruptors.
Exactly. I felt like it was going to be so much worse. I saw it coming, too. I was so worried for GunGfu because I saw his Colossus go across the rocks, and I was like, oh, no, if he tries to pull them back, they're probably just going to go down as opposed to behind the rocks, which is where they came from. But he managed to salvage it, and fortunately, I think the terrain of the map helped them as well, where there was another high ground to the right side, fairly close. Yeah. So SortOf couldn't really do a great job of chasing. GunGfu, has to be reminded that, be very, very careful with how you walk across the map, because SortOf is now almost maxed out. He could be sharking around for you, as opposed to what happened just 2 minutes ago, which was him being purely defensive. So GunGfu, again, pulls back, gets some of his macro started up, and might even... I'm wondering if he's going to try and prep for some Stargate transitions, but he's actually sending out double Hallucination War Prism. That's cool.
Yeah, just going to try and pick up some info, try and also scare your opponent a bit. I think right now he's just looking to defend, and obviously that can still lead into you kind of obviously defending or transitioning into Stargates. 10 drone kills as well. These disruptors putting in work, but is he going to be missing them when it comes to this fight back at home? Banelings are trying to bust through. So far, force fields are good, and it looks as though he's going to be all right. These Banelings don't get much done at all. I mean, okay, 7 probes is actually a bit more than I thought, but still pretty well shut down. And he's, every time SortOf's dealing damage, he's taken damage as well. So it's not like he's ever creating a lead with this. And he still just saw, like 70 drones? I know he just lost a few, but he's just not rebuilt those, and he still isn't rebuilding them. And that's got to be concerning as well, because he's not creating a bank. He's not rebuilding out of this. This disruptor shot has to be cancelled, but that's what I'm worried about the most. He's not going to have a major bank for rebuild after one big fight, and that's pretty much critical usually for Zerg armies against late-game ZVP.
Yeah, especially in this type of army. It's not going to be the perhaps bit more secure, long-lasting, let's say, like Lurker army, which we don't see too often since we expect so many late-game Stargates. But this army, once you use it, it is so expensive to rebuild, and it is, it's sacrificial. Literally, the Banelings are going to sacrifice themselves and guarantee you have to be replaced. But SortOf at least is thinking towards somewhat the late game. Spire did get started, perhaps a greater Spire if he thinks that it's something that he could slip in. Timing-wise, it can be awkward against a Protoss who is actually doing a fantastic job of defending, which GunGfu is. He's managed to hold on to his entire army, build up a maxed out, better army, very close to finishing +3. And now he knows that he's got a good chance. That disruptor wasn't as good as it could have been, but still a lot of damage being done to SortOf, who is trying to get an army back together, but it's still going to be that, mid-game army that's not necessarily the best. And even his Ling Run-By isn't doing a whole lot.
Yeah, the greatest spy is on the way, and that's definitely the biggest threat. I mean, GunGfu did add on a Stargate, but he's nowhere near being set up to really deal with Broodlords yet. But Broods aren't on the map yet either, and that's what this push is going to do. It's just going to make sure he never can get to Broodlords, basically. I mean, the problem is so much of what's being rebuilt from SortOf is still just going to be Roaches as well. It's not going to be like the Ravagers and so on. So yeah, that's going to be kind of tough. Let's see, as we do see SortOf trying to come in from 2 angles. Finally, a good set of force fields from GunGfu as well. I was going to say before, it felt like a lot of his force fields were almost on a delay, coming in after the fight or just missing the army. But that set was just what he needed to make sure this was a one-dimensional attack, and that he was able to escape out of there, just killing a base, backing it up. I would be okay with that in most scenarios, but here I really feel like he wants to do a bit more because that Greater Spire is coming through. He has got a Fleet Beacon and a second Stargate on the way. Maybe the first round of Broodlords will still be a bit scary. We'll see soon enough, though.
If 12 Broodlords could be made immediately, then yeah, I think I would be a little scared for GunGfu too. Even though he has a very large Stalker force, it can kind of combat a Broodlord army to a degree. It can buy time at the very least for the Stargates to finish. But in the first place, I'm not really sure that 12 Broodlords could be afforded, not even necessarily in resources, just in supply. First, SortOf would have to give it up, then kind of again find that appropriate timing to slip into Broodlords before GunGfu realizes, oh, you just gave me 20 supply of your army. I wonder what that's for. Let me go counterattack. So it's just, in general, as they get to the late game, unless the Zerg is the one that's still kind of in the driver's seat, it can be very hard to fit in Broodlords for multiple reasons. And in this game, I would not say that SortOf's in the driving seat. He has to get one good engagement before momentum was really on his side, and he's been denied good engagements for most of this game.
Yeah, he really does just need something to just give him that little bit of a leg up and to get back on top of this. But he's going to lose this base on the left side that he's trying to establish. That obviously isn't going to be great for him, so that's something else he has to worry about right now. And GunGFu is just pushing up here. He sees those Banes, so he force fields them very preemptively. I mean, this is just really great. Takes a little while for this army to get through, and now there's just no Banelings for this, so it's like Ravages just running into Stalker Colossus, and that ain't going to go well. And as you can see, this army of GunGFuBanDa is absolutely shredding the forces of SortOf. Yeah, Corruptor kind of flies overhead. That's not going to really add to anything right now. GunGFu just pushes in for the win. He's got a few units coming up the right side as well, and SortOf does have to tap out of this game. And we have got ourselves a GunGFuBanDa 1-0 lead.
That was a really impressive ending, though. I mean, I know that GunGFu was kind of just winning the game in general, having gotten to a late-game Protoss army that was well upgraded with very good units. I would say that he was winning, unless SortOf could have held on to Brood Lords or something better. But still, the last 30 seconds there, to take the engagement like that as calmly as he did, and almost perfectly. I don't like using that word in StarCraft, but it was really nicely done. The very calm force fields to set up the scenario, even when he was still a bit surprised by the full surround, the back attack as well, he still was calm as a cucumber. He just was like, yeah, the Banelings aren't really a threat anymore. It's just roaches. They're not great at pouncing. Let me just dodge some of these corrosive biles, kind of pull a Colossus back. He made what was usually a very frazzled Protoss defense for anyone worse than him, made it look super easy.
Yeah, it was actually a really fun game, by the way. Just like back and forth action all the way through. I know GunGFu was on like the leading edge of it, but you know, there was Baneling run-bys, there's Roach counters. I love the moment GunGFu takes to the map, right? Goes to the center and says, hey, you know what? I feel like I've kind of got what I need to just apply pressure right now. And that's something you don't see a lot of in PvZ nowadays, because everyone's so busy building up to, you know, the Sky Tars, getting Storm ready to go, and, you know, making sure you've got a Disruptor or two at home just to survive. Obviously, the Disruptors on the map gave him a lot of information all the time about what he's playing against. It's keeping SortOf at home, and it gave just GunGFu a lot of, you know, mobility on the map, actually. And it was just really cool to see him utilize that, rather than just saying, okay, the Disruptors are cool, and now I can just sit back at home and build up. It wasn't just that. It was that something extra. Well, that definitely helped, because it definitely created some better trades for him early as well. And all of that adds up into kind of what was the bigger lead at the end of the day, as GunGFu just needs a moment before we'll hop into Game 2 Blackburn for our second map, though.
Oh, very cool. We might see GunGFu continue to use... I can't call that last build unorthodox, because it's more just kind of an older style of playing this matchup. But he might, again, even open up with a Robo, maybe some Zaun inspiration. I know that there's a bit of a divided interest in spoiling results on the A stream for the B stream, but I feel like I have to mention this, that Stefano is up 1-0 versus Clem.
I feel like, ZG, today is the day where all my guaranteed bonus points or free points and the predictions are just like, no. You know, it's like, you are not getting any free 3,000 points a day, Wardy. Nuh-uh. Clem, Stefano. Yeah, Stefano's going to take a map. Rain or Strange. Yeah, Strange takes a map. All right, guys, I see how it is. Just trying to sabotage us over here, so you like to predict the B stream. Unbelievable. As we are back into this series, though. I mean, that's a crazy result. I'll have to go and check what happened there. But for now, bottom right-hand corner, our Reds play it down on that. We'll see if we can tie it up. It's SortOf.
In the bottom left is the blue Protoss. He is GunGFuBanDa. See, now I do have the B stream up on my second monitor, and I will be paying attention. That would be an absolutely sick result for Stefano. I mean, I don't know if it's going to mess up the groups a whole ton, as that is this group. Place,
right? Like,
yeah.
Say like Spirit continues through and gets like, you know, to 6-1 or something, and then Clem is like 6-1 because, or 7-1. No, sorry, 6-1 because he loses to Stefano, right? Like, it actually could mean like first place doesn't go to Clem, and you know, then the next thing you know, he's got to play like a Serral in the first round. One of them's in the lower bracket. Then if there's another upset, suddenly one of them's not at the season finals again. You know, it's been a crazy year where out of 2 season finals, we've not had all 3 of the top European players, Clem, Serral, and Raynor, at the same season finals so far.
Yeah, that's right. It's been awkward in that sense. And by the way, it's not even about Clem losing to Stefano potentially. He could absolutely lose to Marine Lord. That is his last series. That's happening tomorrow. So very possible that Clem's not first. And I know we usually highlight guys top 4 makes it into the playoffs next week. Top 2 makes it into the upper bracket playoffs, a little bit advanced forward. But then Wardy mentioning top 1, that is going to make the difference of you being seeded against the second or first of other groups, right? So these things, they all do matter. I guess maybe like you could argue third, fourth might not matter as much. Probably expecting similar skill level of what you're being seeded up against. But yeah, it's a very good point about first or second. And Clem, again, if he were to lose to Stefano, might have to start worrying about that.
Yeah, third, fourth is like it only matters if someone like has a real nightmare. It's like, you know, if Clem or somebody's in like third or fourth, well then I feel like you're just unlucky, right? But yeah, first, second is really, really big because it really is the difference of maybe just already, you know, you say you start in the upper bracket, but a lot of the time with these guys, you basically start in the lower bracket anyway, right? So yeah, it's rough if you do end up against one of them. I mean, so far this game, just to quickly tap in on the PVZ, we're kind of waiting for tech structure to come down so we can really chitter more about what's going to be happening here from GunGFu. Got so much gas.
Yeah. He has a lot. Yeah, what the heck happened?
Yeah, he just didn't build a tech structure. He's just going to double Stargate at the same time. Okay, that's been a while since we've seen a double Stargate, but I can get behind mixing it up a bit.
You know, I threw out the Robo, Zaun thing because he did Disruptors last game. And that could have been cool because I think it is a neat build on Blackburn. It's pretty much been figured out, I suppose. But the double Stargate, also one of those builds that comes around on this map. I don't know if it's been figured out necessarily, but I think it is perhaps... Well, I guess the Robo's also kind of easy to hide, but it's going to be a surprise. Like, regardless of what GunGFu's doing, it's a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to build Phoenix, right, off this?
Yeah, I think so. You'd have to, because if it's a Tempest build, it's Stargate, Fleet Beacon, then maybe second Stargate. Yeah.
You've seen double Stargate Phoenix on this build a bunch? That's what I'm surprised about.
No, I haven't. No. The double Stargate in general, yes, but not Phoenix.
Okay. It's just clarifying the difference. I was like, have I been missing some PVZs? I mean, that's very possible, because I won't lie. PVZ's not the one I tune in for every time. I've missed a couple games.
Oh, no judgment. No judgment.
Yeah.
But you know what the other cool thing is that for SortOf, you can kind of easily tell if it's like a carrier or a Tempest opener because the fourth gas is taken. It has to be taken, the fourth gas in the natural before the third Nexus. But for now, SortOf's just seeing like...
It's the depths.
Yeah, he might be just a bit confused. Now he sees the fourth gas go down before Nexus, but then he's probably just... There's nothing clear to him, I would say. So he's going to be scratching his head until a bunch of Phoenix just show up in his base.
I mean, you can just see he's to cut drones to make units. He didn't get the lab right away. I really feel like he was setting up expecting Adepts, but now we're past the Adept time and he didn't build as many Roaches as he might have done if Adepts were showing up. So now he's like, well, what is going on? Because he's obviously not seen the early Stargate units. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit confusing, and he is going to get a fight here on these Adepts low ground. We're going to warp into Zealots with those Adepts as well, as the Adepts actually going to shade up to try and help fight on the Natural as well. There's a pylon that helps to block there. One Adept shaded up by mistake, it seems. The others cancelled their shade, but that single one did not. Nothing dies as the Phoenix show up. They're going to start killing Overlords now. There were some Spore Crawlers built preemptively, but as soon as these Phoenix are seeing extra Queens start up as well, it's just making sure that Queen count rises. Because you're not expecting these Phoenix right away, you're not 100% gathered together. That first Queen goes down for free, and already the Phoenix get a decent start, but there's a lot more work to be done yet.
His problem with Phoenix is that they're just kind of guaranteed to get damage over time. Maybe they don't get 20 drones right off the bat, but they're going to always exist, for the most part. Unless SortOf is already prepping Aspire and trying to play Corruptor against them, which in itself is a bit odd, but definitely isn't going to be pre-planned by most Zergs. Maybe again if they were picking up on a double Stargate build early on, but it's just really hard for SortOf to tell exactly what was going on. So instead, he did build the Lings, the Roach Warren, and now he's getting an Infestation Pit. So I guess going up to Hive and kind of keeping with that plan, but things are already a bit awkward. Now, the Queens, for the most part, doing an okay job defending, lots of transfuses. Only 2 of them went down for the mass amount of pickups that happened, but I'm actually really surprised by playing like this. Just more drones and more bases.
Yep, more drones, more bases, infestation pit straight to hive. Now adding on a baneling nest. And GunGFuBanDa, meanwhile, just going to get double robo up, which, I mean, you look at what SortOf's got, which is, well, kind of just lings and a few queens on the map. I don't mind just double roboing it and just kind of getting a few units out, maybe even get Colossi out here, maybe just go a few more. I feel like GunGFu is completely safe on the ground to do as he wishes. A Twilight Council's on the way now as well, and that's the only thing that's really been missing so far, right? He's going to be very late towards a charge or anything. So yeah, but I mean, these Phoenix are still going to dominate the skies. They can obviously still harass a whole bunch. Doesn't look like GunGFu's in trouble at home. Now 15 roaches start. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I mean, he did see a move out. It was kind of the weirdest little army, though, with no upgrades, no charge, or resisting glaives. Only just now starting +1 for the grounds, but still perhaps considering the threat of a transition already being underway. Technically it is, it just really has not transitioned yet. Double Immortal only now getting pumped out. So perhaps a little scared of what could be coming along.
Yeah. I mean, this is just, I mean, we're going to drop a Spire down as well. I mean, I feel like what SortOf could have done last game because of how GunGFu was playing is if he just went to that Greater Spire much faster, probably would have been great for him, right? And maybe he says, well, hey, if you want to play this ground army again, you better make sure your transition is really good, because otherwise, I'm going to go faster Broodlords and maybe kill you and catch you off guard this time. Obviously, at least there's double Stargate already up this time from GunGFu, so that's nice. We'll see if that is going to be the full idea of SortOf rush up into that Greater Spire. I mean, if that is the case, it's the question of can you survive those few moments before your Greater Spire is done when that one big push of the Protoss shows up.
I mean, I feel like kind of confident for SortOf. I feel like the Phoenixes, as much of a surprise as they were, didn't really get nearly as much as they could have done. It's not really led to even a tempo advantage, is what it feels like, because I think that could have absolutely been a thing. But SortOf, he really just went with it, man. He was like, oh, Phoenix, that kind of sucks. And just kept making queens. Yeah. And built hatcheries, which of course Phoenix can't do anything about, and then just droned, which they can do a little bit about that, but then they have to dive for it, which is what we're seeing now. Finally, 12 drones go down. That's fairly nice. A lot later into the game, though, and many Phoenix have lost their lives to do it.
At least he did just get that Greater Spire, right? Yep, so that's obviously really good information. And that should tell GunGFu that he's got a push timing pretty soon here. I mean, extra Ravages morphing, Roaches are on the way as well. I wouldn't mind, obviously, he doesn't even have charge yet, so even just faking the push to force units out so you don't have as much stacked up rage, just mass Broodlords, and that gives you more time for your Fleet Beacon to come online, your Stargates to get rolling with some Tempests. Looks as though that is mostly the plan from GunGFu. We'll still see if he ends up committing. He's still got a little while where he can attack before that Greater Spire is done, so we'll see if he wants to. He's got Storm starting, though. It looks like we're more likely just to see a bit of a longer game from him. As on Blackburn, you can take 4 bases, and if he gets that forward 4th base locked down, taking the top left bases, especially against someone who's about to play Broodlords, that shouldn't really be an issue, because there's not going to be a ton of mobility on the map, sort of. So top left base should come pretty naturally for GunGFu later, but now is he too far forward? Does he get caught completely off guard up here? He was not ready for SortOf to come and jump on him, and he just recalls whatever he can, but he loses a bunch of high-cost units.
I think what GunGFu was planning on doing there was force fielding the ramp that the units are now going down as we speak. Because he was moving to the left, and I mean, he could have just been retreating, thinking like, oh, I haven't seen the army, where is it? But he has shown a lot of confidence with similar armies, and you can, as long as the force fields are good. And if 3 force fields got on the ramp, it would have bought him enough time for more force fields, for a better positioning, going up a different ramp, right? Obviously, the corrosive bios would eventually break it down, but I think that's what GunGFu was trying to go for, and instead he just moved into the army, and that was a bit of a disaster. He certainly lost any potential, not necessarily timing. I don't think he could have done anything pre-Broodlords, but still, he doesn't have any position on the map. He can't scare SortOf into not just making Broodlords at this point, which means that SortOf gets to play his game a little more than he would have, having to worry about an Immortal Sentry type push on his gold.
Yeah, these kind of move-outs from GunGFu, they can be risky for what we just saw, but they do kind of give you so much kind of power because you just instill such fear into the zone. It's like, oh, are they really going to attack? Do they really have enough? Are they about to just warp in like a bunch of extra units and go for it? So there's definitely a lot of power in that. And SortOf winning that fight now, you are just free to take your bases, build up, get this going. To end a later game on Blackburn, obviously this becomes one of those maps that splits rather easily, but it splits 6 bases each. still got those kind of 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock bases that become a big question mark, because whoever gets to kind of push forward and hold one of those, which is usually the Zerg, if they can do that, they're going to be in an advantage by a base, and that's obviously a pretty big deal further down the line. So that's something to keep thinking about. We're obviously not at that stage of the game yet, but it's going to be something to think about as the game progresses and keep in mind, because either you want to be ending the game before those bases come into play sometimes, or you want to have a plan on how you're going to deal with them or take them.
They're getting into the late game at this point, for sure. That could be a question weighing on their minds. I think they both recognize the game's going to go on for a little while longer and looking for maybe the tinier pickups, not necessarily the big game-ending engagements. Sort of wants to get rid of supply, which he does in great effect, takes down an entire Nexus, and then rebuild with Vipers and Broodlords, which is exactly what he's doing. And for GunGFu, he just wants to make sure that he does get maxed out, which was a bit more in question after he lost the units. By the way, awfully funny to see SortOf grab Roach Speed after Adrenal Glands. Roach Speed only just finished in Adrenal Glands. He just dived right towards it, man. He really wants to use these Lings to the best of their ability, which they're really the only unit that can do a great job moving around, because as you pointed out, the more he goes into Broodlord Infestor, that just rolled off the tongue, sorry, Broodlord Corruptor and maybe Infestor, the more that his army is slow. So cracklings are really the best way to continue suppressing GunGFu's economy.
The mental scars from 2012 still showing ZG. I know how it is. Yeah, GunGFu is going to get maxed on his carriers and stuff, it seems. I mean, we really are going to have decent armies on either side. It'll be nice when GunGFu gets this gold base up. Obviously, that's always a benefit. But once you get kind of a bit more static defense set up in the top left, the only real thing that then sort of is going to be able to do to great effect is really just harass from behind the gold mineral line, perhaps. And then you really are just set up mining from each side. See a few voids coming through from GunGFu. It's going to be a real kind of cool look into the late game here, as this is a nice catch. Obviously going to get a bunch of units very efficiently here, and while obviously sort of wants to trade these out, much better to trade them out from GunGFu's point of view for nothing. Well, last time he obviously had his whole base cancelled.
Right, this is much better. Does leave a little bit of an opening down to the south. He's going to just preemptively pull the pros, which sure the Banelings can't run after them, but they are pretty safe by looks of things. This really isn't that far away from the gold base, when you're talking about an air army especially. So not too easy or not too hard to defend. It's not too easy to push into SortOf now, who has managed to push forward to this corner base as War Crawlers, but GunGFu's actually going to go for it. I guess he's either meant to or he's seeing an opportunity. The Void Rays systematically align on top of the Broodlords. Mass Transfuse is trying to come down to save the day, but the GunGFu actually just make this look super easy again. Is he just taking this engagement? No problem whatsoever. It's kind of what it feels like.
I think there just wasn't enough anti-air, right? You just said, oh, you've got so many Broodlords, but basically nothing to kill my carriers and Void Rays. And so he just jumped on it. The Warp Prism got targeted down, stopping a couple of the additional Zealots warping in, which might have helped sort of towards the very end. I love this from GunGFu. He knows when he's done, and he just backs it up. He'll know the rebuild here is going to be a load of Corruptors. And knowing that, he's like, right, I'm out of here. Rebuild, get my ground supporting units up again, and go from there, because that was a really good fight for me. He reset a lot of SortOf's army. I mean, when you look at the unit counter now, there's only 3 Broodlords left, and that's something that sort of doesn't have the gas to replace. Now he's just had to build so many Corruptors.
Yeah, he absolutely needed the Corruptors, absolutely. And that's what GunGFu knew he was going to do, so he skedaddled and waits for more Void Rays and for more upgrades. Another one just finished. But yeah, I guess you're right. I guess he just saw there wasn't enough anti-air. That was a good call, because otherwise it looked like SortOf was prepping for the late game. But even he perhaps had not really done a good look at his army and realized, oh, the split here isn't too good. Now it's a lot better. His Spore Crawlers are going to be rebuilt eventually, but they first need creep spread, which sort of, having lost the hatchery, lost the creep spread too. So the ones that he has, it's gonna reposition, maybe in the nick of time. And here come the storms. Void Rays still alive. Maybe not enough of them though, is more on the way. Then sort of could be concerned, but also sort of finally adding in some more spellcasters. I thought he did have Vipers, but I guess they got took down so quickly. Now he's gonna only go into Investors.
Yeah, it's kind of, he only had 2 of them, and they did die pretty quick, and they had like a pretty uneventful Abductors. This fight is going to keep on going. We're going to get a few feedbacks off on Queen, as the Storms are going to keep these Corruptors pushed back. Now they're finally going to start coming into play. There's no Archons on the ground, right? So these Corruptors are not taking any splash damage initially, and this is where these carriers are absolutely going to be feeling the pain. There's a few Void Rays, though, that are prismatically aligned during the entire thing, and they melt those Corruptors, so the carriers will survive this as well at the end. and that's a massive win again from GunGfu, resetting the corrupt account. We just mentioned that SortOf doesn't have a lot of gas, and while he might swarm forward on the ground, maybe take out a base, well, GunGfu's got bases to trade out for now. It's the air army that SortOf needs to deal with, and currently there just seems to be no way to do that. GunGfu does pull it back, just going to clean up these feelings and roaches for the moment. But yeah, I mean, again, just feels like fight after fight, GunGfu is coming out on top.
Yeah, he's sizing these up pretty perfectly. They might not be the most dominating fights ever, but they are absolutely winning fights for a variety of reasons. And that one, again, was sort of perhaps just a little underprepared, not realizing that the fight really was going to come his way. So again, there weren't the Vipers. He had to replace them. Couldn't really afford it with the gas. The Infestors weren't there to get Fungals perhaps preemptively, or Neural Parasites, which also was a spell that finished up in the upgrade before the fight, or as the fight started, kind of around that time. Basically, SortOf just didn't get that time to prepare. GunGfu was catching him unaware of the possibility of a fight, is what it feels like. If SortOf could actually get maxed with his army that he wants, good number of Corruptors, good number of Broodlords, with Spellcasters, and is sieging GunGfu, I guarantee the fights look different because he's kind of sizing it up and preparing for war. But every time he's caught just a little underprepared, GunGfu says, let's do it, let's go, and he wins the fight, and now he's probably going to win the game. He might be able to get maxed out once again, but he'd have to make sure to take much better fights and keep all of his economy alive, which at least now that's back up and running. Triangle base has been retaken.
I love that GunGfu recognizes the situation, though, right? He really knows kind of where SortOf has been at in terms of what he's been able to mine. You know, he knows he's been denying a base a little bit. And he says, well, I've taken some good fights. I've kept a lot of my units alive while you haven't. You must be kind of broke. And so as soon as he's maxed, he starts looking forward, right? He's not sitting back and waiting. He's not kind of focused, thoroughly on just, continuing to build carriers and stuff. He was like, okay, I'm happy to, morph in a few Archons, etc. too. They are obviously great units, and they will build that a little faster. So he's now maxed out. So yeah, he wasn't able to find a way in before this max out of SortOf is going to happen. So SortOf will at least get somewhat of a fair fight here. A bit of Zard Arc on the top side trying to harass, but, well, it's going to be well dealt with when the Archons get abandoned, turns out.
Yeah. Yeah, top side dealt with pretty nicely. SortOf also starting to deal with the bottom side. Warp Prism did manage to finish the warp before going down to that pesky Spore Crawler. But again, another fight. SortOf is trying to micro. He's got a couple of spells down on the Protoss Air Army, but it might not be enough. The Corruptor count is already dipped down to below 5, down to below 3. There's basically none left over, and the entirety of the Protoss Air Army survives. GG. GunGfu takes a 2